Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. Hey, don't forget to check out the Swag Cave, new items up there. That link is in the podcast description, the Resonance Branding Company Swag Cave over there. Also, I want to tell you, I want to hear from you, so you can leave me a voicemail message, whether it's a question you got, a comment, or anything out there. You can now leave us a voice message to be played on the podcast. All right, I'm going to get you that number. It's also in the podcast description, but that number, 715-303-7364. Again, 715-303-7364. So give me your take on sports. You got a question, Bigfoot, I don't care, whatever. But anyways, on this episode of the podcast, we are going to talk actually some Brewers. Brandon has his offseason game plan for the Brewers. Trades, how the roster's going to look, rotations, batting order, all that good stuff. Put a lot of work into this, so Brandon's going to go through that with us in the second half of the episode. But we begin this episode, the first half of this episode, talking some football, Packers and Bears football, to be exact. All right, let's get things a-rolling. Packers, Bears, the longest, you get ready to hear that mentioned how many times during the telecast or such, but the NFL's longest rivalry gets renewed. First matchup between these two teams this year. First division matchup for the Bears this year, too. And the Packers looking to notch their first win in the division column after dropping games to Minnesota and Detroit. Let's do our little bit of a scouting reports, shall we? Let's start off with the offense. Packers, still after the bye week, third in the NFL in total offense. We're talking total yards per game. There's only two teams ahead of Green Bay in terms of average yards per game. That's Baltimore and that's San Francisco. Baltimore and San Francisco are the only two teams that are over 400. So Baltimore's got 440.2. San Francisco's averaging 412.4. Green Bay 390.6. I still feel like that gets a little overlooked. I think if you just asked a general fan maybe, or maybe just, it's like when you say, hey, Malik Willis played a couple games, then he played, at the end of the Jacksonville game there, you'd be like, okay, probably not a whole lot. Factor all that in, Green Bay still, and I think we all agree that Green Bay's offense still has left a lot on the table and kind of keeps shooting themselves in the foot, and I feel like the offense is still a unit, is still a group that is holding themselves back just by stupid mistakes and penalties and drop balls, and with all that, they're still third in total yards on offense in the entire league. And we still, I think a lot of us, most of us, feel like we have not seen the best of what this offense can do. We haven't seen it fully come together yet on a consistent basis. Now, if you break it down a little bit further, in terms of passing yards, Green Bay is a top 10 team in passing yards. And again, that includes a couple games with Malik Willis in there where they weren't throwing a lot, but they're still a top 10 team. Passing yards, really, I think I'd be curious. I'll have to look this up, but it feels like they're a little bit lower compared to other years prior because Green Bay's a top 10 team. They're averaging 235.8 yards per game through the air. Ironically, kind of weird when like the last few years, this is their pedigree was like running the football. The number one team in the league for passing yards per game is Seattle with Geno Smith. San Francisco's 2, Baltimore's 3 too. We know the top rushing team in the league, and that's Baltimore. Green Bay, third in the league in running the football, behind Baltimore and Philadelphia. So offensively, top 5, top 10s all over. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, ninth in the league in scoring average, 25.6 points per game. So that's Green Bay's offense. That's how they stack up, even after coming off the bye week. Where does the Bears stack up with this thing? A Chicago Bears offense that has changed offensive coordinators for this week. Firing Waldron, their offensive coordinator, going to Thomas Brown, former Badger running back coach back, 10 years ago or so. Looking for a little bit of, like a spark. Looking for something to get this thing going. Because when you look at last week's game against the Patriots, Caleb Williams was just 16 of 30 for $120. Swift, 16 carries for 59 yards against the Patriots. The Bears in total yards against the Patriots last week had 142. 142 yards. Against the Cardinals the week prior, the Bears had 241 total yards. Caleb Williams, 217 through the air. Swift, 51 yards. And if we go back to the Hail Mary game against the Commanders in that one, Williams finished with 131 yards passing, but it was, if you remember, if you were watching that game, it was tough going for a long time for a big majority part of that game. Swift did have a day with $129 on the ground, and the Bears did have 307 total yards rushing. But overall, how has the Bears stacked up all season long offensively? They're the third worst team in total yards per game average on offense, 277.7. The two teams that are worse than them, the Browns, and the team they just lost to, the New England Patriots. Passing yards per game, Chicago, third worst, averaging 169.6 through the air. The only two teams worse, Tennessee and the Patriots, the team, again, that they lost to last week. The Bears are also one of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep. So bottom 10 in rushing yards per game. They're averaging 108.1 yards per game on the ground. In terms of points, Chicago, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So still bottom 10 in terms of points per game, 19.4. Now, let's compare to how these defenses are rolling here. There's got to be some positives with the Bears with their defense, right? It's got to be Chicago defense. Well, if we look at it in terms of yards allowed per game, Green Bay and Chicago right next to each other. Green Bay's slight advantage. They're just outside the top 10. In fact, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Chicago right there with each other. There is actually a gap between Minnesota and Green Bay, but in terms of rankings, that's how it goes here. Green Bay averaging 320 yards, giving up 320 yards per game defensively. Chicago, 323.4. But where Chicago's defense has been fairly good has been through the air. Their passing defense. 8 interceptions so far this year. They've gotten 8 interceptions so far this year, and they are a top 10 team in passing yards allowed per game, just giving up 190.4 per game. Compare it, Green Bay's about middle of the pack here a little bit. So, and then when you look at rushing yards per game, defensively, Green Bay is actually a better rush defense than what Chicago is. Green Bay just outside the top 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10th, it looks like. I wish they would have put the ranking numbers next to it. But Green Bay just giving up 113. Still, it sounds weird, but giving up 113 on the ground. Chicago, actually, towards the bottom 10, 133 yards per game they are giving up on the ground. But Chicago's defense has been stingy in keeping teams out of the end zone. While they've been giving up some some rushing yards, and they're about with Green Bay in terms of yards per game and that. They're a top 10 team, Chicago is, in terms of points allowed per game. 18.6 points per game. Green Bay, by comparison, is 21.6. So that's kind of where the rankings are at, where they kind of stack up with some of these other teams out there. So with all that being said, what are some of the key matchups, keys to victory and such? Well, I think one of the things you look at is the Bears' pass defense. Numbers tell you that they're stingy. That's one of their best suits on it, or best areas on their defense, best areas on their team overall. We mentioned intercepted 8 passes. They're 7th in passing yards allowed per game. And when you look at it, okay, Jordan Love, what's one of the things that we have wanted him to be better at? Taking care of the football, not throwing interceptions. So I think that when you look at both of those, Jordan Love's issues with the interceptions, even Green Bay's issues with dropsies with a couple of wide receivers, going up against a Chicago pass defense that has been, it's been pretty darn solid. That's a key matchup. And if Jordan Love can take care of the football, but able to move the ball through the air if they have to, keeping drives going, and not, again, we keep preaching it, but again, for the love of all, stop with the pre-snap penalties. Stop with the holding penalties. Do not put your offense in tighter situations. I don't want to see 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 15s, 2nd and 15s, where, if you are going to get into obvious passing situations, it's going to play in the hands of Chicago's defense. That's what they want. If you are going to keep, putting yourself in a position where it's going to be, we got to throw the ball, that's playing in the hands of the Bears. So no more stupid penalties that stall drives or put you in tough positions. Limit the drops to keep those drives going, and no turnovers on the offensive side. We're talking just from the from the passing aspect, because again, when you look at this, it's like, okay, this has got to be a Josh Jacobs game. This has got to be a running game, because this is the one weakness that this Bears defense has had is stopping the run. So again, and we mentioned it the other day, I want to see in the second half, and it starts on Sunday, a continued effort to give Josh Jacobs 20-25 plus carries per game, still have this running attack be the focal part of this offense. It's got to be a part of the main part of this offense. Get the run going. Establish the run. Get Josh Jacobs going. Pick up those, 6, 5, 6, 7 yard runs. Get yourself into manageable situations. If it's 2nd and 3 or 3rd and 2, continue to put your offense in positive situations, not those long down distances of 2nd and 11 or 3rd and 15 or whatever the case may be. You get it to a 3rd and 2, a 2nd and 4, something like that, it opens up more in the playbook. So the offense has to have success running the football against this Chicago defense that has been giving up some yards on the ground. They're 24th. No, that's their offense. I wanted their defense, but they're towards the bottom. They're towards the bottom in terms of rushing yards allowed on the defensive side. So Josh Jacobs has to, they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th. So 9th worst rushing defense. Focus on Josh Jacobs. Focus on the running game. Continue to get that thing going. Put yourself in manageable downs. Get the run established to set up the pass. Establish the run to set up the pass. And if you are in passing situations, don't turn the ball over. Don't make stupid reads. Don't make stupid decisions. And catch the dang football. And please, let's start to limit the penalties on the offensive line or on the offensive side. So that's a key match. That's key to victory. Elsewhere, there's a chance for this Packers defensive front to put some pressure on Caleb Williams. We've talked about it last week going up against the New England Patriots. The Patriots had 9 sacks on Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is a mobile quarterback. We know this. He can run it. He can use his legs, extend plays, scramble it out in that. But the Patriots had success getting after him 9 times. 9 times in that game last week. And when you look at the last couple of weeks here too, even the Cardinals had 6 sacks on Caleb Williams. Can Jeff Hafley, especially with his secondary background, especially with Xavier McKinney back there, can they confuse the rookie quarterback? Can they confuse Caleb Williams on pre-snap reads? Because if they could confuse, that's what the Patriots did a really good job with against the Bears last week. Confusing Caleb Williams and then getting after him. Can the Packers replicate that? Now, we know maybe that the Bears are going to maybe simplify some stuff for Caleb Williams. Make it a little bit, it sounds bad, but I think, Thomas Brown, we know he's going to do some things differently in terms of calling the game planning and such. Are they going to simplify it a little bit more for Caleb Williams? So they're going to, I would assume, you're going to try to put him in a position to where he's not going to get too confused, where he's not going to turn the ball over, where he's not going to take a lot of unnecessary sacks. They're going to try to put him in a position to succeed. So how does Jeff Hafley and this defense counter that? How do they confuse him? And when you look at the Bears' offensive line, they're banged up. I mean, you look at the injury report, we'd mentioned Jenkins did not participate. But their tackles, right? Limited participant. Jones, limited participant. So there's a chance. There's a chance that if those guys don't go or if they're banged up, I want to see Rashawn Gary take advantage of that. I want to see Lucas Van Ness bust out. He's had some success against Chicago in his 2 games. I think he's had a sack in every single game is what I read against the Bears here. So you've got a banged up Bears offensive line. Let's bring the noise. Let's bring some pressure on him and make Caleb Williams uncomfortable back there. But you got to have that pressure too. You don't want to be so aggressive, and we've seen this before from Packers defensive fronts. We don't want to be so aggressive where, all right, now Caleb Williams is going to use his legs, and then he's going to start to gain some confidence if he's going to be able to pick up some big runs using his legs, using his feet, right? Collapse that pocket on him. Collapse it. Make him uncomfortable. Get him to the ground. Get that pressure against him. I want to see this front 7. I want to see the defensive line just dominate this game going up against Chicago's offensive line. This is a game with Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Rashawn, Van Ness, those TJ Slayton, Carl Brooks, whoever's playing up there. This is a game the Packers have to be able, Packers defense front has to be able to dominate against this offensive line from the Bears. They should be able. Don't let the Bears go in there and just dominate the heck out of you. Okay? Just don't. There's no reason they should. This is a game you have to go out there and dominate. All right? You have to. There's no question about it. Get after it. You should be able to. I don't know if Hafley's going to come out and change up his linebackers. Does he put Quay Walker as a weak side, strong side? How much more are we going to see from Edgerrin Cooper on the field? I want to see more snaps for him, for Eric Wilson and such too. But let's go, man. I want to see that. I want to see that front go. I want to see that front get after it. Other key matchups, other keys to victory with this thing here too. We already kind of mentioned, but it's the turnovers. Win the turnover battle. It's the time of possession, sort of thing here too. But again, we one of those things we talked about was the Bears defense has done a good job of keeping teams out of the end zone. And what has been one of the issues for the Packers offense? It's red zone success, getting touchdowns. So this is a Bears team that has been, not a lot of. I mean, there's been. I don't want to make it sound like they're a poo-poo team or anything like that, because they did get off to a good start, but now it's just kind of spiraling out of control here a little bit. But they are solid in terms of points allowed per game, and in fact, let me see if I can. Is this? Those are some wrong numbers here. But we know the points per game here, where Chicago's been doing a good job of keeping the score down, right? Green Bay's red zone offense, not that great. Chicago's red zone defense, here's some numbers for you. Chicago's red zone defense is second best in terms of touchdowns allowed in the red zone. That's what I was trying to bring up here, and then the computer was being goofy. The only team that has been better than Chicago in terms of keeping touchdowns out has been the Chargers. So Chicago has only allowed 8 touchdowns in the red zone, 48 total points. Total red zone offense allowed, Chicago's defense seconds. And here's the thing too, is like, you look at I'm comparing them to the Chargers right now. Okay, so like the Chargers have 7 touchdowns allowed, 42 points, 42 plays, 189 yards. Chicago's almost doubled that with the plays. They've allowed 82 plays in the red zone, 320 yards, but practically the same amount of points there. So Green Bay's got to be able, if they get in that red zone, we've talked about it, they have got to be able to come away with some points. They've got to be able to come away with some touchdowns. Not always settle for field goals. This is something I want to see the Packers get better at in the second half. Red zone defense overall, defensive red zone touchdown rate, Chicago is number 1. When you factor in everything, Chicago is number 1. In defensive red zone touchdown rate, they're at a 37%. Chargers, we went through some of those numbers, 38.9. So it's going to be tough for this Packers offense to get in that red zone and come away with touchdowns, but they got to figure out how. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be a test, but it's a key matchup. And if they have success in the red zone in this game, it's a huge key to victory for the Pack. And it's they've got options. This is where I want to see Matt LaFleur get a little bit more creative when it comes to these red zone packages. Now, I don't know if it's still Adam Stenovich that does the red zone stuff and comes up with that, but if it's not working, I think this is where you maybe got to get a little bit more creative. You've got Josh Jacobs, you've got Tucker Kraft, you've got Christian Watson, you've got Romeo Doubs, you've got Jaden Reed. You've got these guys that bring something different to the table offensively. It's okay to get a little creative at that. So who's going to have the upper hand here? I mean, everything that tells us in the first half of the season, it tells you that the Bears will have the upper hand if the Packers offense gets into the red zone. That's what that tells us. We'll see if the Packers are able to buck that trend, though, coming in here. So some key players for me in this game then, when I look at it, I'll try to do one from key players or players who got to have a game. I don't like to say key players a lot of times because, well, they could always be the same ones, right? It's always like the main guys, like the quarterback or something like that. So players, maybe kind of under the radar players who just got to have a game. I think defensively for me, I'm going to go with Rashawn Gary / Kenny Clark. I want to see those two guys dominate this offensive line. I want to see those two guys just have their way against a banged-up Bears offensive line. Kenny Clark bringing the pressure up the middle, Rashawn Gary getting it off the edge. I don't want to be stupid and too over-aggressive where Caleb is going to use his legs and gain some confidence on the ground using his feet. But bring the noise, bring the pressure, get after him. Make him nervous back there. You know, another person I'd throw in there is, we talked a little bit about it just a few minutes ago, is Jeff Hafley. How are you going to confuse Caleb Williams? You know, it'll be interesting to see what the Bears come out trying to do on offense right away. Are they going to try to come out right away with some new things? With some new looks? With a few different things? Because if that's the case, you know, Jeff Hafley and his staff, they're going to have to be prepared right away. And I think they're going to go in that mindset with the idea like, yeah, we know that there's going to be some unscouted looks. They're going to try to throw some new stuff out there. We got to be prepared for that. We got to have our head on the swivel. And we got to be ready to adjust to that. So they got to be prepared for that. So I'd throw in Jeff Hafley as another kind of or a guy who's got to have a day. Guy who's got to have a game. And then, you know, offensively, I mean, you can, even though I just said that, you know, I don't want to like keep players in that, I really feel like it might have to be Jordan Love in this game. Jordan Love or Josh Jacobs, one of those two. Because the Bears have allowed some yards on the ground. Can Josh Jacobs expose that? Can he take advantage of that? Can he be the guy that if they get in that red zone, where he gets in the end zone? And then Jordan Love, just from what we were saying earlier, too, about the Bears' pass defense. Don't make stupid mistakes. Don't turn the ball over. Bears have 8 picks this year. Don't turn the ball over. And then when you get in that red zone, get the touchdowns. It's going to be tough going up against the Bears, but get the touchdowns. I kind of wonder, too, like, when you look at these rankings and these numbers and all that, let's say Green Bay gets in the red zone, but say they're stalled at the 5. How is Matt LaFleur, or how aggressive is he going to be? Or maybe say it's at the 3. Does he look at this and like, you know, Chicago's got the top red zone defense. We're just going to come away with points at this thing. Or does he try to be aggressive and be like, no, we got to get this thing going. We're going to try to go for it and get a touchdown. Be interesting to kind of see. All right, let's take a quick break, and we're going to switch gears up a little bit and talk some Brewers with Mr. Brandon Berg coming up after these quick words. Are you hosting family and friends for the holiday season this year? Hey, that can be pretty stressful trying to figure out what to prepare, who likes what to eat, and so on. Well, you can take some of that stress off your plate by simply visiting Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. Whether you will be tackling the cooking yourself or you need some help with preparing meals this holiday season, Hy-Vee can help you out in so many different ways. Whether you want to shop and save some money or you need help with some catering, Hy-Vee in Eau Claire has you covered. So stop on in and get started for your holiday preparations today. Family owned and operated, Toyson Ford is proud to serve the drivers of the Chippewa Valley with some of the most popular vehicles around Wisconsin and the country. They're committed to giving drivers from across the area the best in customer service with a top-notch selection of brand new vehicles to choose from, as well as an extensive inventory of pre-owned crossover, SUV, and trucks. Plus, with their expert finance, service, and parts centers in-house, they strive to be your one-stop dealership for all of your automotive needs. Visit them today at 1000 Chippewa Crossing Boulevard in Chippewa Falls. There is baseball stuff going on, and let's face it, Brewers have been racking up some offseason awards. Last night, another one. William Contreras named to the All-MLB first team, which is fairly new in the last few years, right?
Yeah,
so,
and kind of following in what we see in other sports, All-NBA, first team, All-NFL.
And I like it.
I do too. I do too.
We'll find out more awards next week, like if Pat Murphy's going to get Manager of the Year. He is a finalist. Jackson Churio is a finalist for Rookie of the Year, but I think that's more of the uphill climb.
Yeah, that's going to be a little bit tougher, just because, I mean, the grouping is with him, Paul Skeens, and Jackson Merrill. Yep. Those are all, I mean, all three of those in many years could be the winner.
Exactly.
It's just one of those years where I think it's Merrill.
Oh, is it over skiing?
I think so.
Okay.
But
how much do you think is going to factor in the popularity though too of Paul Skeens? Do you think that factors into?
I mean,
the vote?
it's voted on, so you never know.
Mm-hmm.
But I would go Merrill. Let's put it this way: if I had a vote, I would go Merrill.
Okay.
But
why don't you have a vote? By the way, can't you sign up for that?
I don't know.
Oh, you should. I think they give it to anybody. They give baseball writers ballots to anybody. So
they certainly do for Hall of Fame when you see some of those votes.
I think if anything, it would be a major upset if Pat Murphy doesn't win next week.
Yes, yeah, that's the one. Because remember, they vote after the regular season. Mm-hmm. So Mendoza from the Mets, who might have maybe got some more because of the run they went on, like they voted before they went on that run.
Yep. Mike Schilt is the other one from the National.
Yeah, with Padres.
So. But with the Brewers plan, I mean, you got some rumors, you got some rumblings, there's stuff out there. Brandon had texted me the other days, and you said Brew Ball.
Brew Ball, the website. Every year they'll have a little thing where basically they ask people, like, what's your off-season plan? And they kind of have a rough outline that you kind of follow. Like, here's the different things. And obviously you try to keep it realistic. The Brewers aren't signing Juan Soto and bringing back Corbin Burns.
Right. Which, by the way, I don't know if you probably saw this the other day. MLB.com had a write-up, the second best free agent outside of Juan Soto, and it was voted on by executives, Corbin and Willie, and I'm just like, man,
that's. Think if a team had both of those guys,
right? Exactly. So, anyways, didn't mean to cut you off. You did some work on this thing. Not only do you just have the players,
not as much as you'd think, but still.
But you put the salaries next to it.
Well, that's part of it,
right? But that's what I'm giving you credit for. Don't be humble here, man. You got position players, you've got pitchers, you've got the salaries next to it, you've got a couple trades, you've got a couple new players on there. I mean, you went into the depths here, and there's one thing on there. How do you want to? Do you want to reveal the position? Go by position groups first a little bit.
Sure.
Okay. Because I do have a question on one of them for you.
Okay. Well, and I'll be honest. One of them kind of changed.
Oh.
I did make one tweak.
Okay.
So we'll see.
All right. What do you got? So let's start with the position players.
Well,
or do you want to go by groups? How do you want to do this?
I honestly don't know because there's just a couple different things here, but.
So we know Rhys Hoskins is going to be back.
Yeah, because there's certain things when it came to player options and stuff, and I'll tell you what. I'll do it this way, very simply. There were two player options that were picked up. Rhys Hoskins picked his up. That was going to happen. We knew that. Willie Peralta's team option, which I think was $8 million, was picked up by the team, not surprisingly. I mean, that makes sense.
Freddie?
Freddie, sorry.
Yeah.
Willie Peralta, I don't think he'd be worth $8 million these days. Sorry, Willie. Wow.
That was a throwback.
That was. And then otherwise, you got some guys that are, you can be offered arbitration or you're just a free agent. Mm-hmm. Brewers I offered arbitration for were Yoel Payamps, Eric Haas, William Contreras, Trevor McGill, Nick Mears. Mm-hmm. And for the price, I just went by MLB Trade Rumors website has their arbitration estimation. I just went with that.
Yep.
Because that's, it might be a little bit different, sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little lower, but I figure that's a good rough estimate. So those guys, let's put it this way, those people are all back. People that were not, their options declined on Frankie Montas, Wade Miley, Devin Williams, but as we know, he's still under team control for another year.
Yep.
Colin Ray.
So even though he's on waivers?
Yes.
Colin Ray? Okay.
Yeah. Hobie Milner, Aaron Savali, Jake Bowers, Bryce Wilson. These are all moves that have essentially already happened.
Right.
Just for formality, I'm saying this is also what I would have done.
Okay,
too.
So that's where I was just
so this is all
here. Got it.
So far, nothing crazy. Really, there is nothing too crazy here. And my thinking here with this is, I will say this: based on the math, my opening day salary is down a little bit from last year.
Okay.
Or from 2024, and down much more from 2023 and 2022. I do think that there's going to be an impact with the
TV.
With the TV. Mm-hmm. I do. And keep in mind that the Brewers' opening day salary this year was $116 million. Last year was $126. 2022 was the high water mark, was $138. So it was down a little bit, so maybe it won't go down so much, but it just may not go back up right away, is kind of my thinking. Mm-hmm. So that is something I considered and went into this thinking. So, you look around. A lot of the people you think are back. So, I don't know if I necessarily have, and maybe I can just go position by position at the end, but a lot of the people you expect to be back are going to be back. Mm-hmm. My kind of thought process with this it came down to kind of two main things. Number one, what's the fate of Devin Williams?
Yeah.
Number two, how do you try to find ways to upgrade this team without spending a lot?
Yeah.
Because that's probably how they're going to approach this.
Mm-hmm.
So I've said before that I think Devin Williams is going to be on the move. And I even thought that before, Game 3 of the first round of the playoffs happened. Like that bared no.
Mm-hmm.
That did not change my opinion whatsoever. That did not strengthen my opinion. I just felt like that's just how the Brewers operate.
Did it kind of tip the scales, though, too, when they declined the option so they could get arbitrated because it's going to be cheaper for him?
Yeah.
Sort of thing?
Could be, yeah. I just think that, either way, that was probably the right business move to make.
Mm-hmm. And
my thinking is, with trading Devin Williams, is if you're going to trade him, to maximize your return, you may need to package someone else with him.
Okay.
Because, Devin Williams, we know, is a really good reliever, but he's only got 1 year before he has free agency. So teams may not give up a ton for that. So I looked at, what's the position of strength of the Brewers? It's the outfield.
Yeah.
So realistically, Yelich isn't getting traded. Jackson Schreier's not getting traded. So you had 3 other outfielders: Sal Frelick, Blake Perkins, Garrett Mitchell. One of those guys, you probably could package. And I made 2 trades. And the trades are graded by a website called Baseball Trade Values, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a website where, based on talent, ability, contract, control, it assigns a value to a player. And so that kind of helps. Like, it's always so tough when you're thinking about baseball trades because you're dealing with a lot of times like prospects and stuff. But in both of these cases, my trades are actually considered a little bit of overpays. But I felt like that was probably a more realistic way to do it because there's a few of them. There's a few values that I just didn't agree with, so I didn't trade. Like, for some reason, they had some decent value on a guy like Elvis Peguero, which I didn't really see. Mm-hmm. So I just didn't use that because I kind of almost felt like that'd be cheating a little bit.
Got it.
So in my hypothetical trade here, it was Devin Williams and Blake Perkins to the Yankees.
Okay.
For Clark Schmidt. Who's Clark Schmidt? Clark Schmidt's a starting pitcher. Clark Schmidt he pitched in the postseason for the team. He was probably their 3rd or 4th starter. Pitcher with 3 years of team control left. And you look at his career numbers; they're not eye-popping. He's got a 3.95 ERA and more than 300 innings pitched. Struck out close to 10 batters an inning this past year. That's a solid year. But he's someone that's got 3 years of control left. Arbitration. In arbitration now, projected to make about $3.5 million. To me, that was a better route than, say, picking up Aaron Savale's option for $8 million.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the kind of things that the Brewers just tend to do.
Right.
And also, with these trades, you got to look at it on the other, like, it's not just hey, how does this help the Brewers? Would the other team do this trade? Yankees, I feel like they could use more bullpen help. I mean, they were throwing Jake Cousins out there for high leverage innings in the World Series. Mm-hmm. Blake Perkins, a defensive first center fielder, where when you've got, we know the other outfielders they've got.
They're big humans.
They're large humans, but to have an elite defensive center fielder, that's kind of the thought process when they traded for Trent Grisham. Mm-hmm. But, Blake Perkins, you can get to, who I think maybe a little bit better at this stage of the game.
Blake Perkins might have made that catch in center field.
He might have.
If you know what I'm talking about.
I do think that is something the Yankees would consider. You have a center field, a guy that can play center field, hit at the bottom of your lineup, but he's there for his defense. That allows you to play Judge in a corner, or if you have to play Giancarlo Stanton, you can play him in a corner. Like, it just helps. I just think this is a deal that works for both teams. Mm-hmm. So immediately there's a start. There's another one of your starters, Clark Schmidt. The other trade I made, as I was looking to, I still wanted to try to find a way to, I would say, upgrade this defense, but also kind of help the offense after Willie Adames is left. I mean, I think Willie Adames is gone. And earlier this week, saw a report that the Rays had were fielding trade offers for a couple players. Their first baseman and their second baseman, Yandy Diaz, Brandon Lau. Now, initially, I think in the picture, the first kind of run through I had sent to you, I had traded for Brandon Lau.
Yep.
But I traded that. I changed that.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Okay, I changed that.
So, all right.
And my thinking was, and I kind of thought about this, but with Yandy, I really like Yandy Diaz. Like, he's a player, like, he's just a player I really like. And and he had a higher value than Brandon Lau. Part of the reason I traded for Brandon Lau was just like, okay, well, it seems like a very Brewers thing to do would be to trade for a guy that play second base as an offensive second baseman than play him at first base. That just seems like a Brewers thing.
Yeah.
But I just you know what? I'm gonna do kind of the quote unquote easier thing. I'm gonna trade for Yandy Diaz.
Okay.
He's got 2 years of control left. He's coming off a bit of a down year compared to 2023, but he's still a good offensive player. I think he would fit in very well. And based on Yandy's value, which is still, and he's got team options that are pretty reasonable for this year, next year. So there's value there, even though he is a little bit older. Traded Tyler Black, who has a fair amount of value, and Brock Wilken, who's a corner infielder, played Double-A last year.
Yep.
He had his struggles, but my thinking there is, look, thinking about this from the Rays' point of view, look, the Rays they just announced yesterday they're going to be playing at the Yankee Spring Training Home. If they're realistically fielding offers for these guys, they may view 2025 as, okay, is this the year we take a step back?
Especially because if you're going to be playing in a smaller stadium,
the
revenue.
Maybe they see and they say, look, we're just going to maybe take a step back. At the very least, we're going to go with more of a youth movement. There's a pathway for, look, at this point, Tyler Black should be in the majors. He should get an opportunity somewhere. If it's not Milwaukee, then and Milwaukee doesn't think it's going to be Milwaukee, then you trade him.
Right.
Because it doesn't do him any good to play AAA anymore. He's got too much AAA at bats under his belt. He has nothing left to prove there. And Brock Wilken, I dealt out of a position of what I believe to be strength in the minors. I mean, he's coming off a tough year, so you're kind of selling low on him a little bit. But according to the Baseball Trade Values website, this was still considered an overpay. But the Brewers also have other corner infield prospects that I think in a year's time could be knocking on the door. So I'm fine doing it.
So let me ask a question that you're probably going to get to then.
Yeah.
So if you make that trade, is Yandy at third or first?
Yandy's at first.
So
Yandy's at first because Yandy played third earlier in his career. He's not playing third anymore.
Okay.
So my feeling is you're going to alternate. You're going to rotate that DH spot between 3 players: Yelich, Hoskins, Yandy Diaz. So mostly Yelich and Hoskins.
Okay. So I mean, you're talking about maybe potentially 2 high-priced guys not playing every day.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay.
That's something that you may run into here, and
because it just seems like Jackson was more comfortable in left field.
And he did. But in my thought process was that he would be right field. Even though it's weird because even though Sal Frelick went a Gold Glove in right field,
right,
it's. I mean, I guess he could bounce back and forth a little bit.
Right.
He could play left and right. I mean, maybe if Yelich is DH and then you have Cherry on left and you have Frelick and right, because whatever. But to kind of close the book on Yandy Diaz, 2 years left under his current, under control. Career 288 hitter, on base percentage 373. The big thing though, and you'll see this with my third base plan too, a career 311 hitter against lefties, OPS close to 900.
Yeah.
I've talked about this so many times over the years, but I want to try to find, and even though last year the Brewers' OPS against lefties was middle of the road, they're 14th. So it's not like they were bad. It just always feels like they are.
Yeah.
So really then the other big move is what about third base? Because under my plan, Bryce Turang's playing second, Joey Ortiz sliding over to short.
Okay, you did change that then after
I did. A little bit, yes.
Yep.
A little bit. And I just think Joey Ortiz's offensive profile fits better shortstop. And I would rather just still be strong up the middle. I think it's important to kind of retain that double play combination.
Yep.
So what do you do at third base? Now, as I said, I'm not looking to spend a lot of money. I didn't make any more trades, but there are 2 players I identified that are free agents. I'm individually, they're not. I don't think anyone's going to jump out of their seat and say, "Yeah, signing them." But I think together they could be. The biggest thing I think is they can raise the floor of the offense.
Okay.
Which I think is important. Number 1, 2 free agents. Number 1, first of all, Jose Iglesias from the Mets.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
He had a really good year. He had 320, 330, whatever it was. He's not going to do that again. He's going to be 35 years old on opening day. He has made a career out of being a utility guy that's bounced around, known for playing good defense. He's played primarily short, but he played last, second, and third base this past year with the Mets because obviously they have Francisco Lindor.
Why do I keep thinking Jerry Harrison Jr. when you're describing this?
It's not terrible, but to me, here's what he brings to the table that I like. Last year he was talked about very highly as being a good clubhouse guy for that Mets team. Obviously, if Willie Adames is leaving, there's kind of a bit of a clubhouse presence that could be used.
Yep.
Maybe this is someone that could slide in there. He can play second, short, and third. It's important to have that coverage. A career 280 hitter or 283 hitter, 323 on base. Doesn't hit for much power. Like there's not much extra base skill in there. He's not going to steal a bunch of bases. But another thing, career 300 hitter against lefties. On base or OPS against lefties is 779. Someone you can play against lefties is going to help. So who do you pair with him? Because his numbers against righties aren't bad, but like you could do a little better. Another similar guy, a guy I've always really liked that just is very just like boringly decent at offense. Donovan Solano played last year with the Padres. He is a career 279 hitter, 335 on base, OPS 716, which is right around league average. Hits lefties a little bit better than that. Has played first, second, and third base. The last 6 years, he's hit at least 280. Now, it's kind of an empty average because a bit like Iglesias, he's not going to hit a lot of home runs. He's not going to steal many bases. That's fine. I'm looking to raise the floor, knowing that there are younger prospects like a Mike Bovee, who in a year's time, they might be knocking on the door. I am using these, basically, these two veterans are combined to make what I believe can be one average to above average player. But if this guy is, whoever it is hitting 8th or 9th in your lineup should be pretty good. That's kind of my thought process. Both of them played solid defense. They're not going to get you any trouble there. Also, the other thing to consider too is if Bryce Trang gets some days off, which he will, it's usually going to be against lefties. So chances are both of these guys could be out there against lefties many times. And both of these guys last year made the league minimum. They made about $800,000. My thought was between the two, I think I put Iglesias down for like $3 million. It could be a little bit. I don't know because maybe with the good year he had, like maybe he could get a little more than that. But Donovan Solano was the same thing. I went for $1.5 million. To me, a big draw for these guys coming to Milwaukee is look, you can be a starter or you can get a lot of at bats on a contending team.
Right.
Like you can come in here and you're going to be a part of this. Also, Solano can play first base too if that comes to that. But I'm looking at more for second and third. So that's kind of those are kind of my big moves for it. Now, as I mentioned, in salary, this is with everyone I've got here, it comes to about $103 million. You add in about roughly $12.5 million for the buyouts, the deferments, which keep in mind there are still Ryan Braun and Lorenzo Cain that are being paid. They will get checks this year for deferred payments.
Yep.
And as I said, that puts you about $115.5 million. I unofficially 115.65. But this is a team that I think, and I've got the list here of everybody, like, this is a team I think can come to spring training and win the Central again.
Interesting.
And you look at the breakdown, and I even broke down, like, oh, here's what the lineup could look like, righties and lefties. Like, first of all, versus lefties, I really like it. Because you've got guys in the middle of the lineup like Diaz, Contreras. Rhys Hoskins has hit lefties well over the year. I think we could see a better version of Rhys Hoskins next year just because he's another year removed from the surgery. So, but this is an offense that I would feel coming into the first day of spring training, assuming, health and everything, like this is an offense that I think could do something. And it's a little bit risky to kind of buy on a couple of older veterans like that because once you get to that age, like any year, you could just fall off the map.
Right.
But you're not. The investment's not super high, and I just think that the risk is worth the reward there because they've both been solid bats. Where, like I said, if they're hitting 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th in your lineup, like that's not bad.
Right.
Like you can win with that.
Yeah. So what's the starters?
Freddie?
Well,
yeah. I mean, the starters would be Freddie, Tobias Myers, Clark Schmidt. I had DL Hall in the rotation.
Okay. Yep.
And Brandon Woodruff. Like I do think Brandon Woodruff is going to be a bit of a ramp up.
Okay.
It's not going to be like he's from day one he is.
It is a bit of an unknown.
So that's more of a season long thing.
Okay.
Bullpen. Trevor McGill, I think, is your closer. Yep. That's fine. He did well in it last year. Aaron Ashby, he's another one of those that could be either. I said bullpen.
Yeah.
But
it seemed like he thrived a little bit more. I
thought so too. Yoel Pyaps, Nick Mears, Jared Koenig, Brian Hudson, a guy that kind of we forgot about a little bit, but Adner Uribe. Maybe he gets we just chalk up last year's kind of a lost year. And then for your long reliever, I got Carlos Rodriguez, who pitched a little bit last. But I mean that could be anybody. That's not a big deal.
There's one name missing, Gasser. Robert Gasser.
He's going to be out for a while yet.
Okay.
Because of the injury.
Okay.
He's still going to be working his way back.
Okay.
So, your position players, I mean, your catchers are Contreras and Eric Haas.
Yep.
Knowing that Jackson Carroll, who missed all last year with an injury, is one of their top prospects at catcher. He'll be at AAA. Like, by the end of the year, he could be the backup catcher. But you want to give that would give him time after missing a whole year to just play AAA. Don't worry about it. Yandy Diaz first, Turang second, Ortiz third. Said the combination of Solano and Iglesias the third. Reese Hoskins is your other backup infielder. Your outfielders, Yelich, Churiel, Frelick, Mitchell. And I said Isaac Collins, who played on the team last year. But and keep in mind, this also offers room for because you're going to see guys get invites to spring training.
Right.
Basically you get a chance. You see it a lot with veteran guys. And there could be some bullpen guys out there that the Brewers identify hey, maybe this guy's got something. Not unlike they did last year with the guys like Brian Hudson and Jared Koenig.
Right.
That are just off my radar. That's fine. I mean, there's movement there. But to me, this was realistic because, again, the salary, because of the moves, and it's something that I would feel confident going into the year that, hey, this Brewers team can contend again.
All right. Think so? Positive?
I think so.
This division's kind of weird for me because I almost feel like, are the Reds going to be buyers this offseason with Francona coming in?
I kind of wonder that, too. And I think they could. First of all, I thought that was a really good move. I like Terry Francona. I think I've said this before, I think he's one of the best managers in baseball, especially of the 21st century when you look at how he's had success at different places.
Right.
And I think that could be what that younger team needs to kind of get a kick in the pants. But you're right. I could see them making a run at a guy maybe like an Anthony Santander or someone that's a free agent to add to that offense because they had some decent pitching.
Right.
So
could they be that one of those low revenue mystery teams that's getting rumored with Juan Soto?
Maybe, but man, I don't know.
I almost feel like that's just one of those typical rumors that's kind of out there.
I feel like that's something that an agent puts out there, oh no, we're not just looking at the big teams,
right?
But
yeah,
that's kind of like the thing that's kind of been rumored out there with Roki Sasaki, Japanese pitcher, who is going to be posted, and they're like, well, he'll probably go to the Dodgers. It's well, doesn't necessarily sound like that might be the case. So, but it's kind of one of those, we'll believe when we see it things.
Right. Good work, man.
Thank you.
Work in there.
This actually didn't take me very much time.
Hey, don't sell yourself short. You're an incredible slouch. All right, that is going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast. As always, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. That way you never miss another episode, because sometimes we've got multiple episodes dropping each day. Till next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I'll talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.